Welcome back. Well, finally I'm going to start this build. The weather's fined up. Hopefully this is the end of the rain. You can see it's still a bit of water on this pad, but I can't wait any longer. I've really got to get this done before you know it, it'll be too hot. Anyway, so I've got to drill a number of holes, 600 millimeters diameter and about 3.5 meters deep at the deepest point, because this is on field land and I don't know what to expect. There's a woodlot here, and originally that woodlot used to actually sit right where this workshop's going to go, so there's a high likelihood we're going to hit some major roots or stumps or something, but fingers crossed. Let's see what happens. First thing I've had to do is map out the markings. So I just put a piece of board like this, and so the string crosses over and you can adjust it both ways. And I have checked it diagonally, and this is pretty much on the money. And I'll obviously do it again once it's all drilled and the concrete's in. I will get it 100% accurate then, but it's within about 5 millimeters at the moment, which is plenty accurate enough for footings.
So I made these forms to support the top of the pier, and all I start doing here is taking a bit of the dirt out just so that I can move that in the right spot. Now that string line marks the actual edge of the wall, and with the pier itself the reinforcing sits in there, so it's positioned so it sits a little bit outside of the building to get maximum strength. This is the digger unit I've got. It's a hydraulic unit, fits to my excavator. It is an excellent unit, and I did get the optional lighting system on it, which they call a halo, and I'll show you that in a moment. This is the auger, so it's a 600mm auger. It's designed for pretty hard earth, and it's got some decent teeth on it that should be able to get through roots. Once I double check the measurements, try the first hole. Sure as eggs, I'll get about a foot down and I'll hit the first tree root. And you can see here, it starts to pick up a little bit. But even though this auger is quite big, and I think it is starting to push the limits of this excavator and hydraulic system, it did the job. And you know, up to about a 4-inch tree root I was able to cut through with this auger system. So there's the halo, you can see that light around there. Whoever designed that, I've got to say it's an excellent unit and well worth the money, and it just is really useful, particularly when you've got a block of land like mine where it's a bit hilly, and it's without that it's hard to tell when you're sitting exactly level. So there's the first hole. It's basically done. That one goes down 2.4 meters, and I'll show you a bit later when I clean that hole out. I'll mark off the next hole and progressively go around, and I'm doing the deepest holes first because the weather's still a bit dodgy. There's still a bit of rain about, and you know, things could go pear-shaped pretty quick. So again, second hole, get a start on it. They all seem to go pretty good. There's some rocks that I hit, but not really large rocks, so I was able to get through those. A few tree roots, and just about every hole there was a tree root. Overall, for the first 8 holes I did, there were a couple that were a bit painful, but I got through it, and this digger system has just about paid for itself already, just with this one single job. So here it is in normal speed, so you can get an idea of the halo and how it works. So when it's level, the lighting system goes completely green, and you can soon see when you're gone off a bit, and it just allows you to straighten up again. I think every auger should have that on there personally. I've got an extension on this because these holes get deeper and deeper. So this second hole is 2.7 meters, and then it's on field land, so it slopes down, and I need to go down to natural ground, then another 1.6 meters, which, you know, sounds pretty crazy, but it is what it is, and I had to do that to get it approved. So that meant for this hole 2.7 meters, the next hole's 3 meters, the one after that is deeper, and the last hole is actually 3.7 meters deep, which sounds totally ridiculous, but anyway, I was amazed that the unit was able to do it. And it's doing quite a good job here. Now what was interesting with this hole is it was pretty dry to start with, and you can see here I'm down over 2.5 meters and it starts to get a little bit muddy, and I don't know why, but I got past that mud and it sort of dried out again. There's the second hole. It's getting dark, you can hardly see down the bottom. Now this is skipping a few holes. This is the deepest hole, and as I said, this one went down 3.7 meters. I had more than one extension, but I only put one on because otherwise I can't lift it out of the hole and clear the bottom of the auger. So instead of that, I just put the arm of the excavator down the hole, and you can see how deep it is. That's about it there, so 3.7 meters. I'm pretty sure this workshop ain't going anywhere with footings like that. Now I level the top of these footings, and the idea is the columns, which will be one of the next steps, will bolt directly to the top of that pier, and then on top of that will be the actual slab or the floor, and it will be a floating slab. There's that last hole. I sort of trying to shine a whole torch down there, but just about runs out of light. It's so deep. Now this is the first hole. Now what happens with these augers, you can't get all the dirt out, and it's probably not necessary, but I feel like these footings are overkill to start with. I may as well go all the way. And I've got this unit here, which I don't know what it's called, maybe a hole cleaner, and it does an awesome job, and it just allows you to get every last bit of dirt out of each hole. So the settling process for the pier should be quicker because it's really on completely solid ground. So I did this on all the holes. Simply drop it in, rotate it a few times, it skims up all of that loose dirt, and you can't really dig with this obviously, but again, whoever came up with that, I don't know, maybe it's a standard thing, but I think that's another excellent tool to use. So you can see it here. That's about what you get out, depending on the hole and how much breaks off. You might have to do 2 or 3 loads, but this one just needed the one, and you can see there's just perfectly clean hole, so can't get any better than that.
Well, I've got 8 holes dug, and the engineer's coming this morning to sign these off.
Now with the holes dug, the next thing was to make up the Rio. So this is one I made up previously, and you know what, it's hard work. The first one I didn't really know what I was doing. It took me probably 3 or 4 hours, and I'll show you this one. I learned a few things and made it much easier for myself. So I spray paint those lines just to know where each bar's got to go. So at the top of the pier, the first 7 bars or 6 are closer together because that holds most of the load, and then after that they're spaced out a bit further apart. So I put the rings on, which I had made, custom made for this obviously. Put the ties on, and I put 1 Rio bar in. So I put all the rings on the whole length. So I made 6 meter lengths, and then once they're made, I simply just grind them to the length I want and then drop them down the holes. So go along, put them all on, and there's probably about 40 rings over that 6 meters. Now the key is, what I found is, once I've got that first one on, I tie off that Rio ring to something solid so it can't wobble around, and it makes this process so much easier. And once I do that, I'll go along, put the second Rio bar in with most of the ties. The third Rio bar, I just put a tie every meter or so, and I'll do that the same with all the remaining Rio bars. And once they're all on, it's just a matter of going along and tying them all off. And you know, I went from probably 4 hours to make one of these to this one's probably 1 hour. And this is how I tied them. It's like a figure eight, and it holds the Rio in place really well. Pros out there, who knows, no doubt there'll be better ways to do this. I've only got the manual tool because I'm only doing one job. Now there's a couple that you need to spring back or it needs a fair bit of tension, and with just one tie I found that they just broke. So what I did in these cases is I just put 2 on, and 2 seemed to be strong enough to pull those Rio bars together. And there it is, done and ready to go. Last thing is just put the form ins, and I secure them down and screw them down so they're exactly level. Now these are actually picket fence posts, believe it or not, and the picket, you know, has got like a point at the top. I found that worked perfectly as putting it upside down, just hammer it straight into the ground, and that was the cheapest option I could find. So I lock these in when they're level, and again, to me, when you're dealing with concrete, it's really like a time bomb. So you want to do as much as you can in the planning phase to make that concrete pour as easy as possible, because I don't think it's a good idea to be messing about with levels once concrete already arrives. And getting this right just means that putting the columns up is going to be a much easier process. So here we are, just cut it to the right length, drop them in, and as I said, I did these for the first 8, and so far so good.
Well, there we go. There's the first 8 all set up, ready for concrete. These are the deepest ones. So I'm going to do these, see how it goes. And then I've still got a whole heap to do on this other side. So I've done 8. There's still probably another 20 to go, believe it or not. But it's still wet and I don't want to take too much of a chance. So really happy with these. Got the formwork. These have all been lasered to exactly the same height to make it easier when I put the columns up. And as you can see on each of these, I'll put some wire just to hold that during the pour, and I'll cut that off at the last second. This is the deepest one in this corner because this is where most fill is. Unbelievable. 3.7 meters. Jeez. Just about would have drilled through the other side of the planet with that one. And then same all around. These come up awesome. So there you have it. Let's see what happens in the next step when the concrete actually arrives.